Joe Belcastro, welcome to the Dallas Film Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Tony Armour.
Joe, you have a long and varied history in the entertainment industry, film critic, WWE executive for 7 years, and showrunner, director, writer, all that fun stuff, and now an author. So why don't you kind of give us a little bit of that backstory, run us through how you kind of got started and where you are at now.
All right. So one day I just woke up. I moved to Florida. I was from upstate New York, and I just took any job. I had a business degree, and I was in HR of all places. And in Florida, you go to work dressed like a PGA golfer every day. And I hate golf, and I didn't like working 9 to 5, and I'm naturally a creative person. So I just said, screw it one day and quit. I was living with my girlfriend. She looked at me like I was crazy. And then I said, I think I'm just going to try to review movies. And that's literally how it started. And it started with me just waking up or setting the alarm to go to the movie theater at Thursday at midnight to make sure I get my review out in time. I found this site that hired me. They paid me crap, but I was like, whatever, I got to start somewhere. And just kind of ballooned from there. I kind of gained some traction as a film critic, which then blossomed into a journalism career. And then out of nowhere, and I say out of nowhere because it's something I always wanted, but I kind of just let it go. I didn't think it would ever happen. WWE came calling, and I tried to get this job forever out of college. And easily 8 to 10 years went by and nothing. I actually heard I was blacklisted on HR at WWE because I applied too much. And then for some reason, somebody I met speaking as a film critic down here said they met somebody up in New York that was HR for WWE. And when they said, hey, I'm from Tampa, they said, do you happen to know Joe Belcastro? We read some of his articles because I used to eventually start writing articles about movies I want to see made or stories that maybe Hollywood should cover. And I did write a Vince McMahon biopic, which would be very interesting right now, I think. But yeah, so then I didn't believe it. And then I got a phone call the next day. Next thing you know, a month later, I'm in a writer's room in Stamford, Connecticut, writing a television show for WWE. And then I kind of progressed through the ranks and learned so many things. It's a weekly television show with no off season, so you're thrown into the fire. And I'm jumping through that a little bit, but like if I didn't do that, I don't think I would have had the courage to try and be an author because I wanted to do something creative outside of wrestling. It just kind of ran its course. I was very happy there. It was my dream job. And then I just said, let me see if I can write this trilogy that I've always kind of had in my head. And I gave it some thought, figured out the dynamics, and then I put in my notice. And for the last 3.5 years, I've been hustling as an author. So it was kind of like hustling as a journalist, kind of reaching a nice, comfortable life. It was hectic, don't get me wrong, at WWE, but I was pretty much set. And then I was like, you know what? I kind of missed the hustle because I wanted to challenge myself, and I really believed in the story. And that's kind of where I am in about a 2-minute nutshell.
Yeah. Well, and you had told me before that working for WWE was kind of like being on tour for a rock band because you're just like on the road and just like go, go, go all the time. So I could see where you would get worn out after doing that for 7 years.
Yeah. And look, you also just got to listen to your body, and you have to kind of gauge your creative mind. I don't think if I would have stayed with WWE for maybe 5 more years, I could have been very fortunate to maybe live comfortably and slow down a little bit, maybe retire early or something like that. But when you're at your creative peak and you feel like it's now or never, and you can't do both, you just got to take a risk. And I was comfortable like taking the risk, and if it pays off, great. If it doesn't, at least I don't have any regrets. And that's kind of where my head's at right now.
Yeah, and it's cool that a lot of people, knowing you as long as I know you, just imagining Joe working for HR is what amuses me the most.
There is so many stories if you think about how I have this relation to HR. Stories I can't tell, but I started in HR. I got in trouble with HR. It's just weird how that was like kind of a little bit of a loose thread through my life.
Yeah, that's amusing. We you haven't seen it. I know we talked about it. We'll watch it soon. But my first awful movie that I made that kind of kickstarted my career that no one should ever see except for very close friends. It gets me. I rewatched it the other day, and it gets me thinking. Now that you're talking about HR, we should write like the 2024 version of Office Space because of what my movie was and what the HR thing. I don't know. It's an idea for later that we can discuss but I think something like that might be a little might be fun.
We could use I think I kind of loosely told you about my HR experience at WWE. I think we could use that. And I could those 3 months were an adventure, but
we're talking in circles here, so the audience has no idea what we're talking about because we don't. No, I know. We don't want to reveal, which is fine. So we'll switch gears, and I'm going to go back to your days as a film critic a little bit, and then we'll eventually get to talking about your books. But now you still go to a lot of screenings now because you're still on the list, and you get to go to like the press screenings and everything. You ever have that urge to jump back into writing something, or do you have like a PTSD from being a film critic where you watch something, you're like, I'm just going to go to IMDb and write a generic review with no name on it because I have to write this because it's driving me crazy about this film or anything like that?
There's a couple times in the last few years where I did kind of have an urge where I wish I had a platform to get this out.
Yeah.
I saw something either because it's great and I would just want to praise it, and you can do it on social media, but Ghostbusters Afterlife, they did that, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
And there was a moment I was just really wanting to harp on, and I was like, I'm like, this movie was so damn good in my opinion, except for this one lazy scene that just kind of ruined the ending for me. But like that happens. But you know what's interesting? And I picked up on this within the last week. I try to turn off my brain, and I can do it when I watch a movie. I don't get in like that review mode, and I don't even get into like that producer mode where I'm like, oh, they should have shot this way or something like that. But when I watch TV, I do like television shows. And for instance, like going back to the movie thing, I just watched the Roadhouse remake.
Yeah. I'm unsure on that one. I'm not sure if I want to see it or not because I've heard some people say, oh, it was good. And other people were like, no, man, it's terrible.
Yeah, I heard the same thing you did. And I watched it. And again, I was able to watch it just like, all right, show me what you do. And I enjoyed it. And I didn't think about other than, hey, this is an action movie, right?
Yeah.
But there was one line, they're at this big climactic moment at the end, the big fight, right? And they're doing well with it. And then they just throw in this one stupid line that just took me out of it.
Yeah.
And that's where my critic mind turned on again. I was like, all I want to do is like, I pause it, I think about it, and then I go back and watch it again. But no, movies I don't, which is weird because that's all I ever did was review movies for like 5 years. But TV shows, and I bring that up because Sopranos, I'm a poor Italian. I did not watch The Sopranos when it came out. I just started watching it this past January. I saw the hype for the 25th anniversary of the show. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to watch it. And I had no reason not to watch. I just didn't do it. And I watched that with a critical mind. I can't turn it off. And I'm trying to feel like, all right, well, the show was the first of its kind, the first type of format, how they delivered it and packaged it, So I'm trying to give it a break. But yeah, like you said it earlier, I do wish I had a platform right now because I just don't get some of the things that are going on in that show of how they delivered the story.
Yeah.
And I'm in the final season right now.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's interesting because now you think back and like I remember at the time, I haven't rewatched it since I watched it when it originally was out. And so it was 25 years ago, the first season came out, and then however many seasons it ran, whatever the last season was that, re-kickstarted everybody's love of Journey somehow. But it's hard to watch something sometimes when it's old like that because everybody's duplicated it up to this point today. And you're like,
and they've improved on it too,
right?
Which they had the benefit of coming after the fact, where these guys took a huge risk. And when you do that, you're gonna find some flaws later on as it ages, right?
Yeah.
But so I try to turn that part off in my brain. But yeah, it's just funny how when it comes on and when it doesn't. But
yeah, it's hard. Sometimes you get triggered by little things. I know, this past weekend I was triggered watching a show, and I just couldn't leave it. I couldn't leave it alone. And it was a skinny woman who was supposed to be joining the Marines and ripping off 20 pull-ups and 114 push-ups and running an 8-minute mile. And I know, I'm not going to. But the person they cast, one look, I'm like, there's no way this person is doing that. There's no way. There's another character in the show, 100% believable, like badass chick, right? She could do it. But the person that was cast, I'm like, but she can't. I know she can't. I can just tell. And then when she kicks the butt of the special forces guy, that's like a big, trained for 20 years special forces guy, I'm just like, I want to like this show. Why are you doing this to me?
Yeah, and look, we were, believe it or not, in WWE, we were the logic police.
Yeah.
That in my era. And so, yeah, we were very aware, like, if a big guy punches you, you better drop. If somebody of the same size punches you, don't go down right away. Like, there's this little things like, don't insult the audience anymore, because the audience is smarter now because they've been exposed to so much. But the funny thing is, button up the review stuff, I hesitate to talk publicly about things I like, things I don't like, because I put myself on the other end of it, where I had a TV show that got reviewed every week.
Right.
And I don't know if this is me being hypocritical, but I just didn't pay attention to the reviews. But you hear about them. And now that I have a book, a series, a trilogy, whatever they're trying to launch, I'm always like, don't talk about things. If somebody asks me about wrestling, I kind of shy away from it, because I think it's bad karma.
Yeah.
Because I've done both sides of it now.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny. I know even while you were working for WWE, you really never admitted that you did. You weren't somebody who went out and be like, I work for WWE, because you would. What was the career that you would tell people that you had if you meet somebody on a plane or whatever, and the inevitable, what do you do for a living question came up?
Yeah. I mean, we have some time, right? I won't go long, but the whole genesis of that was every morning I had to go to the airport to fly out to do the show somewhere. Or sorry, not every morning, but every Sunday morning. And so this Uber driver picked me up, and I was 6 a.m., I was just out of it. And he asked me, what do I do? And I said, WWE writer. And then he became a stalker instantly. He knew my schedule. He was always the guy picking me up for 3 weeks straight on a Sunday. And, I was like, all right, I can't do this anymore. So what's the most boringest thing I could think of that nobody wants to talk about if they ask you what you do? I said,
film commissioner.
No, your job's in this. Community college admissions counselor. Nobody ever wanted to talk to me. If they start a conversation on the plane or wherever, I say that, and I become very uninteresting to that person.
I love that.
You saw that. I mean, I even did that in Cannes with you. I didn't tell anybody what I did.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I remember maybe it was your first or second year or something like that, whatever it was. And we were in Cannes at the festival, and everybody, and that's the thing about that, particular event. Oh, are you a producer? Are you a director? Are you whatever? And you were just like, no, I'm nobody. I don't do anything.
Yeah. I mean, we can get into Cannes forever, like the whole dynamic of that. But I just did it because, sometimes you just don't want to talk shop.
Right.
Like, and for me was a vacation. And it's nothing against, I didn't want to hide WWE. I'm very proud of that. But I also just wanted to unwind and not talk about it. And, sometimes you get these people that are just rabid WWE fans.
I was going to say, there's some serious fanboys out there. And yeah, I could see where, while you're not a celebrity per se, if somebody knows what you do, like they get dialed in, like your Uber stalker.
Yeah. Well, the attraction with wrestling for the last, I would say 10 years now, has been the backstage rumors and stories and the dirt sheets. And everybody wants that. Some people gravitate to that more than they do the storylines on the show.
Right.
Especially nowadays. And we got pretty good, and they're even better now at blurring the reality. You see it right now. I don't watch as much as I used to, but I'm still kind of paying attention to what The Rock is doing now that he's back in WWE for this run to WrestleMania. And they're very good at blurring the lines because he's legit on the board now of directors for
Right.
company, and they're playing up that final boss gimmick, and they're doing well with it. Like they're setting records right now, and I'm happy to see that. But yeah, like the thing is, people live and die by wrestling,
Yeah.
and I'm so surprised by that. But it helped me out. It was great.
Well, changing gears a little bit then. So writing, wrestling for a long time, and then you had this crazy idea that you wanted to quit your job and become an author and write a trilogy of books. Talk a little bit about just that process. So you'd written before, obviously, as a journalist and as a film critic and everything, and then, you know, writing for TV, but writing novels is very different from writing in those formats. Talk a little bit through the process of like what you had to learn or what changed for you in your writing to then adapt to writing books. And before you do that, you might as well tell us what the books are about. I guess we're talking about and haven't said at all what the name of the books are or what they're about.
Well, we're trying to stay on target with the podcast. It's a Dallas Film Commission.
No, it's all good. These podcasts are, let's talk about anything and everything. It's all good. We're a conversation.
So I wrote an article in 2012 about a movie I wanted to see. It was about, I wanted to see this epic God versus the devil. And I'm not religious or anything like that. I just wanted to see it play out. We always got teases with like movies like The Prophecy or Constantine. And I love Lord of the Rings and like what Peter Jackson did. I'm like, I want to see something like that. So fast forward, 2020, I'm sitting there and like that popped in my brain again. But I was like, I'm not going to set out and do something unless I really have a good premise. And then I was listening to this band. I just saw them a couple nights ago, actually. The 69 Eyes, Helsinki, Finland. They're like a goth metal band. And I was listening to one of the songs and like I was singing the lyrics and I switched it around in my head. And I was like, oh, what if the devil banished God from heaven? And I was like, what if the devil banished God from heaven? So I walked over to my couch. I outlined it for the weekend, came back to it. And once I saw the whole story mapped out, that's when I knew I can maybe tackle this. So then I put in my notice. Now, the question
I'm picturing this. Hey, Vince, I just had this idea. What if the devil banished God from heaven? By the way, I quit.
He would be like, good. No, he was... it's just so weird to talk about him at this point in life with everything going on. No, I was just, I knew you had to outline the story. I wasn't going to leave unless I had a direction. And then I was like, I want it to be a book. It would have been a lot easier probably in terms of creating this if I just wrote a television show or a movie. As you know, I know more people there than I do in the publishing world for sure. And so the only thing I knew I had to do before I left WWE is don't take a break. And that's what I would say to anybody setting out to write a book. You have to be willing to go. I think that's the best way to do it nowadays with what I've learned about the publishing industry. Some people can take years to write one book. And that's, based on varied factors, like you might have a full-time job, you might have family, you might be able to write once a week. But if you're going to try to do this and you're able to do it, don't stop. So I took 8 days off. I knew the whole story was going to be mapped out. I had to learn how to write on the software, which wasn't, that hard.
So you're not writing in like Microsoft Word. What if you're writing a novel? What software are you writing in?
I use Scrivener, which is the film version of Final Draft, basically. Okay. Some people do use Microsoft Word, from what I've found out, but Scrivener was very easy to organize, like all your chapters and notes and stuff. So that part actually came pretty easy. Like the writing, if it didn't happen, like journalism, weekly television show writing, and then books, I think my books would have been a disaster.
Yeah.
I think I needed to have that training and learn about storytelling and pacing and all that stuff and arrangements, know when to get out of things. I think that helped me because I did 3 books in almost 3.5 years, I think.
Yeah, I remember when you first started, when you quit and you were first starting, and you did this through all of your books. You treated it like a job. You wake up every morning, you had your schedule, you sat down and you wrote 8 hours a day or whatever much amount of time you put into it. Like it was Monday through Friday, boom, boom, boom. It was a scheduled job that you did to write these.
Yes, I mean, if you're gonna, in my mind, and it's different for everybody, but if I was gonna lead my dream career, I was gonna make sure I'm invested in this. I'm disciplined, no distractions. You make sacrifices. I saw how that worked once in journalism that helped propel me to where I got. So I wanted to kind of replicate that, but I didn't. I mean, I thought about it, but I didn't realize like all that imposter syndrome you get again.
Yeah.
And that creep back in more than you probably even know, and you know me pretty well. But that was something to overcome as well. Like, so the writing part, it's different than every like screenwriting and TV show writing and journalism, because obviously it's voluminous. Like there's so much.
Yeah.
But once you get a hang of it and you get in a flow and you know where the story's going, that's the most important thing. Know where the story's going. And then get a proper editor. And like you had to learn like where you can get all these tools, right? You have to find an editor that you trust. That's trial and error. And then you gotta get the right book cover. And then you have to do the market research about what type of book cover. And so my plan was I'm gonna do a lot of this with what I think I know how to like do it and what I've learned. But I'm gonna do like a soft opening, and I'll learn from my mistakes. And that's why I released book one. I let it get out there. I did a tour and I got feedback and I found what I did right, what I did wrong. I met certain authors that tweaked some stuff. So I was able to pivot and kind of get book one to where I wanted, change the cover, do an audio book. And then the process for book 2 and 3 became a lot easier, except it's just the publishing industry is so, I imagine it's just like film, but it's just chaotic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a different animal and there's so many. And I say this probably in a naive way, or maybe I'm just ignorant, but I cannot believe how many people write books, because I feel like you need, again, this is just my opinion, but if you don't have any storytelling training, book is hard because you can lose an audience quick, you know, and you're kind of doing it on your own if you don't have an agent or a publisher.
Right.
And everybody needs to be produced. I don't care what level you are. You need somebody to pull you back, whether you're a Christopher Nolan or whether you're, somebody like me just writing books for the first time. You need somebody to tell you something, but you don't have to when you're writing a book, which is dangerous because you could, just fall off and not realize you're going the wrong way. And you don't know if you can get a second chance again. Once the audience reads you once, they might not come back around, especially with today's attitude of just like, catch me right away or I'm done. I'm moving on to something else because I can.
Yeah. And I think that's really interesting in that I think it is very similar to screenwriting in a way that technically anybody can write a screenplay. And it feels like everybody has, because the number of people that email me and like, hey, I wrote this story, can you help me get it made? Or call, or that you run into at events. And it's like, the barrier to entry for writing is much lower than making a movie, right? You don't need a crew and you don't need a bunch of money to write a book or a screenplay, whereas making a movie, you have to have a lot of other pieces and a lot of help. And so you can be creative. But then what do you do? Like you said, the publishing part is really hard. So now in today's world, there's the ability to self-publish, but then that's a whole other skill set that has to be on top of just the right. It doesn't matter how good or how bad the book is. How is your marketing then to actually get your book out there into the world to get people to read it?
Yes, and you're going to find out that very soon, because a little plug for Tony Armour here. He has a graphic novel coming out, Terminal Kill.
Yeah.
And I'm here to help you. Obviously, people more successful than me in the author world that you can tap into, but it is tough. The marketing is the biggest thing. I went through the agents. That's where I did kind of pull some of my connections. And I was able to jump the line. I got some, feedback that's just not boilerplate type stuff that you get from like rejection letters and stuff like that. And that was helpful. If I signed on with a big agent, I probably would have taken it. but I do like the indie model. And I went to a lot of conferences and I met a lot of successful authors that were very generous with their time with me and told me how it could happen. Now, sometimes it just might not happen. I'm still I did the work, I put it out there. I've gotten a little traction, but I'm nowhere there as an author from what I want to set from standard for me, and then where I could go with it. But you just can't get frustrated by that kind of stuff. You just, you could have a well-written story. You can done the cover correctly. The blurb on the Amazon page is awesome. Just sometimes the story might not resonate.
Yeah. Well, and you've got, so it's Dominature. I think it's the first time we've actually said the name of the, the name of the books. Come on, Joe, you're on a show here. You're supposed to promote your product. Dominature. Now, is it Dominature book 1, 2, and 3, or what? Do they each have different names for the 3 novels?
Yeah, Dominature is a series title, and then the book 1 is basically What the Devil Banished God from Heaven, because I thought that was the best marketing thing I have.
Yeah.
I might as well make it the subtitle. Book 2 is Blood of Crichton, which really leans into the alt history that I love to write, because you switch the dynamic of devil banishing gods, and you have this whole new story you can tell throughout history. And then the last book, which just came out 2 weeks ago, Live to Evil, is it's pretty much a straight up action story, a little more sci-fi. Even though I kind of tried to write these books like if Christopher Nolan tackled Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Basically means I like the epic flow of like Tolkien, but I love the realism and the grounded element that Christopher Nolan brings to things like the Dark Knight. And so I'm like, how do I mesh that? Which is probably a huge goal.
Yeah.
But
because these are essentially fantasy sci-fi novels. These are not biblical epics, right? So you're not taking the Bible and expanding on a biblical story of the God and the devil. It's I wouldn't even call it necessarily alternate version of anything biblical. It is all fictional. It's strictly different characters and a like fantasy sci-fi epic storyline. Because when I read them, I read them as a film guy being like, oh yeah, this could be a movie. I see how this could be a movie.
Yeah, I think the feedback and the reviews I see, everyone mentions how it's very cinematic in nature, which obviously just speaks to 7 years of writing television.
Right.
And then also I did that on purpose because I don't know if the readers coming up, if there are any, they're not going to sit there and appreciate, well, like George Martin did with like Game of Thrones, where he could take 5 pages and describe a hallway in a castle. But I don't know if that's going to stick. I'm a big believer in moving the story forward.
Yeah.
And, the generations I think you're going to see, we're already seeing that with on-screen stuff, right? Content is getting shorter and shorter. And I was kind of mindful of that, even though my books are, first book's 400 something pages, and the other 2 are 300 something pages. I was mindful of like, all right, what do you need to establish here with the plot, with the character? Are they developed enough? And then keep going. And then the action scenes, same thing. Like when do you want to be epic? Because if you do something epic early on in a story, how are you going to match it at the end? And so you got to be aware of that balance. And Dominature was set out just like, a steady build. And then when you get to one spot, I love cliffhangers, as you saw in book 1. I have to bring you back down and do some more world building, character building, and then you have to amp it up. And that, my time at WWE, I think, like whether people like the story or not, time will tell. But my time at WWE, at least I'm confident that like I was able to pace this the right way.
Yeah.
And I was able to take you on a ride and keep you there. You mentioned, is it biblical? Not really. I do have a social commentary running through the whole thing. But I'm not picking a side if there's a God, a devil, or anything like that. I'm like, I want to do something impactful. And like the one part of the Bible I did screw around with, like there's Jesus, and it's not the Jesus you know. But that serves the story because the characters are not biblical characters.
Yeah.
That make up most of the story.
Yeah. What does your Catholic mom think of your novels as she read them?
Yeah, she's on book 3 right now.
Oh, Joe, why?
Well, so look, she knows. She sees the vulgarness, and she's like, "Do you have to use the C word?" And I'm like, they're Australian. It works. That's
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Those characters, if you ever met an Australian, every other word's a C word.
Yeah.
So
that's like the mom, dad. That's how the Australians are born in their words that they say, basically.
Yeah. But look, it was fun to write these stories. I mean, I accomplished the goal of at least getting them done. This whole year is now about the marketing side. And it's like how you've dealt with it. And I'm sure all the people you speak to, you know, the biggest thing is, and I see you say this at like Cannes or like at your Sunscreen Film Festival, you gotta you wrote it, great. Now you have to put all these other components together. You have to understand the business side of it. And I think that's where a lot of people get overwhelmed or they don't even think about it. And it's like, no, it's not just a creative business. It's there's a whole other side to it, like you said earlier with the marketing.
Yeah.
And you got to be prepared for that. And I think the better education, you know, like something Film USA does, they're very good at, you know, prepping people who will have this dream and they should absolutely chase it. But there's go in prepared or you're going to get overwhelmed. And a lot of people shy away after that. They don't want to keep going.
Yeah. I think the book world, same thing as the kind of the screenplay world where, you know, the conversation I've had, I couldn't count how many times. It's like, well, I wrote this. Someone should just take it and make it. Why won't somebody just take this and make it? I'm like, well, that's not how the industry works. No, but I wrote it and it's good. So you just go take this and you make it. Like, that's not how this industry works. And you try and explain that you can't just be the writer who writes it. And like, but people in Hollywood, that's their only job is being a writer. They write this and then people take it. Like, yes, I know that's how some people, but the vast, vast majority of people, it's not how it works. But nobody wants to put in the actual work. They don't want to take the time to figure it out. It's like, well, I don't want to be a producer and to chase money and to put actors together and put this together and do this. I just want somebody. So you want someone to do the work for you is what you're saying. You know, if you're not willing to put the work in yourself, why should anybody else do it? And, you know, you have to be kind of harsh like that sometimes, but people don't want to hear it.
Well, I mean, being transparent is the best thing. I mean, that's how I survived. I mean, I had to answer to, you know, Vince McMahon, who was running creative forever and built a global empire. Same with Paul Levesque, who's now running it. And they never like coddled me, and that helped. I mean, they weren't ruthless or anything like that, but just like, here's why this doesn't work. This is why you should let this go. And they nipped it in the bud. And, you know, part of that was we have a show coming up this week. And guess what? As soon as we get off the air, we're doing another show, maybe 3 days later. So that bluntness, I guess we'll say, is very helpful. And the more people hear that, I think they'll get in a better mindset how to attack this rather than just having the fairy tale dream of like, I'm going to write something and blah, blah, blah. I mean, the one thing people told me or I saw at these author conferences is you should write to market. I understand that completely. Yeah. I could probably churn out a bunch of urban fantasy books, but my goal is to write something different. I will fully admit that. I'm not saying it's the best way to do it if you want to break in as an author, but I was like, if I'm taking a shot, I'm going to do something that's attention grabbing and hopefully, you know, it just resonates with people. And there's examples of that, but yes, they're few and far between.
Yeah.
And who knows when it will hit? You know, these books might catch on 10 years from now. I just don't know.
Yeah. Write the story that you want to tell the story that you want to tell. And then if you want to jump in and write true crime or urban fantasy or, you know, romance novels or whatever it is that, you know, people want to read, then you can also do that, because then at that point it's, yes, you're being creative, but also it's a job, right? Like, you've dialed into this is the job that you're doing now.
Yeah. And there's I know you think you remember this, but like the rare times I actually tinkered with the film industry, because I've always been like, I don't want to do indie film. I
nobody,
just
nobody does, but that's where we live. That's where you end up.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel their pain, because I feel like I've been like an indie wrestler, an indie filmmaker with this author stuff, because I go to any book festival all around the country. I'll do whatever. I don't care. I have no ego about myself, but like the people that just sit there and think, okay, I'm going to write this story and I'm going to push it. I'm going to push it. I'm going to push it. Okay, but eventually you just got to let it go. However, if you write a story and you get it in someone's hands and they say, I kind of like that, do it again. And that's like with somebody well known. I won't say his name. I'm not a name dropper, but I sent a script to somebody that I had, because I wrote like two screenplays in my life. I sent one to somebody I knew through a connection.
Yeah, this is the one I know that we're talking about. That's the Versus.
Yes, that's a good.
I know. Again, we're talking in circles here to protect the innocent, not reveal any names. But
Yeah. Yeah. So I sent it just because I was like, you know what, I have this thing. It's pretty good. It's relative to what these people do. So I sent it over. They thought it was cool. They didn't make it. They didn't sign us or anything like that. But they said, you have the green light to send whatever you want to us now. And that's half the battle. So like, even if you write something and it gets rejected, it could just be the tool to then open the door, and then you can write something else.
Well, and you know what? That's honestly 100% how this industry works. So many times when you are a writer, and if you get that pitch meeting, you wrote this script or whatever, the spec script, and you're getting in front of somebody, a studio, and you're pitching it, always have what else you got in your back pocket, because they may like your writing. They're like, oh, this person's a good writer. I like what they write, but they're just not interested in whatever that story is. They're like, well, I like this, but we're already doing something similar with X, Y, and Z. Well, what else you got? Well, I have this other thing that I wrote that is this, and this. Oh, that sounds really interesting. Or I have this other idea that's half done or whatever. It's like, that sounds good. Send me that when you're done with it. And so that's why you always have to have that, what else you got? And I think you going in a respectful way and them reading it, and they're like, yeah, this isn't for us, but let us know when you've got what else you got.
Yes. I mean, that's huge. And I see that, again, I'll bring up Can. I see all these people, and it's where you should be. If you're serious about filmmaking, you got to put yourself in that arena.
Yeah.
And experience that.
Well, let's shift gears. We got a couple minutes left. So let's talk about that to close it out.
Okay.
So Cannes Film Festival. Joe, as someone who has gone to Cannes many times, when I go, I'm there in whatever capacity I'm supposed to be there, right? Like when I went years previously, it was as an independent filmmaker. And then last 10 years or whatever it's been, I'm going as a film commissioner promoting my area when it was Florida and now Dallas. And I'm dialed in. That's my job, promoting the destination, bringing people here. And when I'm at Cannes, I will make more connections in 10 days there than the entire rest of the year combined, no matter what I do. And it's, to me, the most impactful thing industry-wise that any filmmaker can do on a yearly basis, because you're meeting everybody in the industry from all different levels up and down the board, from standing in line, getting a falafel, and it's the executive producer of the King's Speech that just won the Oscar, a couple of months before that I ran into the one time. But you, as now someone not in the industry, what's your perspective on that particular event?
I mean, again, it's a must attend if you're serious about being a filmmaker, because you're going to be you're playing. It's like sports. The way you get better is you play with people better than you. And that's what Cannes is. It's all the best are, there. How you get access to them, hey, that's part of the game. You figure it out when you're there. For instance, I went there, as you said, a few times, but then one time I did go when I released my first book, and I put a banner up at one of the pavilions, your pavilion, and you never know who you meet. Like, there's people that took my book, and sometimes these people are very quiet and they don't say they're the executive producer for, A-list celebrity or something like that. But you're in the game. And then you're learning things you need to improve on. And I've been to a lot of film festivals. When I was a journalist, I covered a lot of indie film festivals. And Cannes is one where I'm like, forget the other ones. No offense to Sunscreen, go to that one too. But you got to be there. Now, the other side of it, you have to be self-aware and don't be taken advantage of. I literally had somebody talk to me at the last Cannes. We were at that pajama party. And, you meet everybody. Again, I'm kind of quiet about my background. I just am there to enjoy the whole scene, and it's a spectacle there. And this one guy is like talking about WWE, and I'm in this conversation, and I haven't really revealed anything other than like, yeah, I did a little work for them. I didn't say what level I got to. And he's name dropping people that don't even work there. And he's trying to impress people like, oh, I know this, this, and this. Completely full of crap. Not one thing was true. And then I started chiming like, do you know so-and-so? He did this. And I would completely make it up. And he's like, yeah, I know that. So like, there's that side of it too.
Yeah.
There's just complete frauds trying to be, oh, what's that phrase where they're like, just guilty by association, I think.
Yeah, fake it till you make it.
Well, yeah, there's fake it till you make it. But yeah, they're just like, if I'm there, then I'm doing it. Well, no, just showing up there, yeah, that's part of it. But you got to be involved. You got to be able to talk to everybody, then weed them out. Who can help, who cannot help, and, slowly build. I think that's what a lot of people keep forgetting, right? Like I saw, plenty of examples with people that come through your pavilion. Some people were there, didn't know a freaking clue about what to do. 4 years later, they show up and they're like making movies. We have friends that are just like one day like, hey, I want to be movie producers. And they're doing great. And they just directed their first film a year ago. And, I've seen that happen, but they did it by showing up, learning the ground floor, learning everything. But a lot of that was the genesis of that was at Cannes.
Yeah, because so much of it is the people that come through and be like, I have no idea how this works. I'm really just getting started. I'm trying to figure it out. People will very naturally want to give advice or be like, oh, well, this is how this works. And they want to help. People really do actually want to help. But if you come in and pretend like you already know everything and try and you're like, I'm Mr. Big Shot or whatever, people can see through that and then just like, I want nothing to do with this person. And so if you're just if you're just honest,
Well, I mean, you saw me when they asked me to do panels there. Like, I'm the most annoyed ever when I'm on a panel. Because everyone's like, I do believe, like I've been fortunate. I don't say this in a bragging way, but like I got to live my dream job. Not many people get to say that. That said, I sat on a panel, like all those people are there to listen to you. They're there to pick something up that can help them. And it's not for you to say like, oh, I did this. Oh, I did that. I worked with The Rock, or here's a story of an accomplishment. Like, I don't talk about myself. I'm like, what do they want to know? What can help them? Because that's the goal. But like half the time, these panelists, and they're accomplished people, just are like, here's my rap sheet of everything I've done. It's like, how's that helpful?
Yeah.
Like, it's not. Give them real world advice. Give them something a tactic they can use, a nugget they can, take and maybe build off that. But it's just the nature of the beast. I mean,
yeah. You get that at any film festival. It's just magnified at that one, probably, the most well-known, oldest, kind of one in the world. And it's not like, it's the easiest film festival to get to, right? It's like, oh, you do have to go to France and pay for airfare and hotel and all that kind of stuff. And it definitely does add up. But if you can find a way and, roommates and everything else, it is super, super worthwhile. But that's why there's so many Europeans there. It's easy for the Brits and anybody in Europe to just kind of hop on down, but there's still a huge number of them. People assume that if you're there, you're just doing something in the industry because it takes work and it's a little effort to get there.
Yeah, I mean, I just did it the opposite way. Like in the book, not opposite, but like I used the book example. Like I went to the biggest indie author convention, and thankfully I saw all these hustling indie filmmakers over the years. I'm like, all right, I think I know how to maneuver this and figure some things out. And I did. Like, it was very worthwhile for me. It was overwhelming. Again, I had like that imposter syndrome. And I'm just like, okay, but by doing it and, taking a big shot or sacrificing to save up to go to something like that when I didn't have the money to do things like this, it's well worth it. I can't impress that upon anybody. Like, you got to go do it and you'll figure it out.
Yeah. And it's fun too, that there's a little bit of that factor, which you can have a little bit of fun too. Did you ever read or see the old movie Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court? So it's an old classic book, Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court. He travels back in time to King Arthur's time, and he's just like this author in the 1800s or early 1900s or whatever. So it's like a classic novel. I can't remember who wrote it. And in the book, like, they're gonna burn him at the stake because they think he's a witch or something like that. And the way he gets out of it is he knows what year he's in for some reason, and he remembers that there was a total eclipse at one point in time. And he basically says, "You better let me go, or I'm going to darken the sky and leave it that way forever." And they're like, "Ha, no, we're not going to do it." And then the total eclipse happens, and he's like, see? And then they let him go, and he even like has to get into a fight with a knight or something. So he makes a gun because he knows how to make an actual gun, and uses that in his fight with the knight to like shoot through his armor and stuff.
Huh. How long ago was this movie? Or the book?
The book, probably early 1900s. The movie was like 1930s or something like that. I'm surprised they haven't remade it, frankly.
Yeah, it sounds like something that'd be an interesting little...
Yeah, it could be done. It could be done in a cool way. Think of it like the 1930s version of Army of Darkness.
Yeah, you're speaking my language.
Minus the monsters. So, Joe, we're going to have to wrap it up here. Any final words about your book, the Dominature book series, Joe Belcastro? You can find him on Amazon. What's the Instagram handle? All that website, all that fun stuff.
Yes, you can find me at joebelcastro.com. It's all geared towards my author life and my background of my writing career. And all the books are on Amazon exclusively. There's ebooks, there's an audiobook for book one. And Tony knows I love social media, but I am on Instagram at Dominature Novel. I even took a challenge, talk about taking risk and doing things outside your comfort zone. I'm on TikTok, author Joe Belcastro.
I'm ashamed of you.
I'm ashamed of myself. Trust me. But yeah, those are the best spots. Dominature, based on the Devil Banishing God. Give it a shot. There's a free ebook on my website, kind of 40 pages. You can check out if you like my style, if you like where I'm going with it, and then you can check out the books after that.
Awesome. All right, Joe. Well, thank you for joining us here on the Dallas Film Podcast, and I'm sure I will see you soon in Florida.
You know it. Thank you, Tony.
All right, man.